The bells of matins echoed through the stone corridors as I made my way to the scriptorium, my bare feet silent against the cold flagstones. 3 years had passed since I took my vows at the monastery of St. Benedict, nestled in the wild forests of what the traders called the New Territory. Here, where civilization barely touched the ancient woods, our small community of brothers devoted themselves to copying sacred texts and preserving the Word of God. My name is Brother Thomas, though in my heart I sometimes whispered the name my mother gave me before I was surrendered to this holy life, Timothy. I was but 18 when I arrived, fleeing the harsh memories of plague that had taken my family in the distant settlements. The monastery offered refuge, purpose, and most importantly, silence from the screaming voices that haunted my. The scriptorium held 20 wooden desks, each positioned to catch the morning light streaming through tall, narrow windows. Brother Marcus, our head scribe, assigned me to copy psalms, work that suited my trembling hands and uncertain Latin. As the youngest among us, I was granted small mercies, softer parchment, better quills, and access to the great library when my daily tasks were complete. 'Twas in that sacred repository of knowledge where my soul first knew temptation. The library stood apart from the main cloister, connected by a covered walkway lined with carved saints, whose stone eyes seemed to follow my every step. Inside, countless scrolls and bound codices filled shelves that stretched toward shadowed vaulting. The air hung thick with the scent of dried ink and something else, something that made my chest tighten with unnamed longing. Brother Augustine served as our librarian, a position of great honor among our. He was not much older than myself, perhaps 25 years, with dark hair that curled despite his attempts to keep it shorn in proper monastic fashion. His eyes held the deep brown of forest earth after rain, and when he spoke, his voice carried the melody of someone who had known learning before entering these walls. "Brother Thomas," he would say when I appeared at the library doors, "what knowledge dost thou seek this day?" His manner of speech enchanted me, formal yet gentle, as if each word were a prayer carefully chosen. Unlike the harsh barks of Brother Marcus or the mumbled prayers of the older monks, Augustine spoke as if language itself were sacred. "I would study the lives of the saints, Brother Augustine," I would reply, though in truth, I came merely to be near him. He would nod solemnly and guide me to the appropriate texts, his fingers brushing mine as he placed the heavy volumes before me. Those brief touches sent fire through my veins, a sensation I tried desperately to interpret as divine inspiration, rather than something far more dangerous. The library became my sanctuary within the sanctuary. While other brothers spent their free hours in contemplation or additional prayer, I haunted those sacred halls, pretending to study while stealing glances at Augustine as he tended his precious manuscripts. He moved with quiet grace between the shelves, treating each book as a living thing deserving of tender care. Sometimes I would catch him watching me, and our eyes would meet across the dusty shafts of sunlight that painted golden bars across the ancient stone. In those moments, the air itself seemed to hold its breath, heavy with unspoken word, forbidden feeling. "Thou art most devoted to thy studies," Augustine observed one evening as the bells called us to vespers. We were alone in the library, a situation that occurred with increasing frequency, though I told myself it was mere coincidence. "The saints inspire me, brother," I replied, though my eyes were fixed not on the illuminated pages before me, but on his hands, as they carefully rolled a finished scroll. His fingers were long and graceful, stained with ink from his daily. "And which saint speaketh most clearly to thy heart?" he asked, moving closer under the pretense of examining my work. I could smell the lavender soap he used, mixed with the warm scent of his skin. My mouth went dry. Saint Sebastian," I stammered, remembering the martyred saint whose beautiful form graced one of our most precious manuscripts. Augustine's breath caught almost imperceptibly. "Ah yes, the young soldier who chose faith over worldly comfort. A most inspiring figure." The way he spoke those words, the slight emphasis on inspiring, sent heat rushing through my body. I dared to look up and found him gazing at me with an expression I had never seen before. Intense, searching, vulnerable. "Brother Thomas," he began, his voice barely above a whisper, "dost thou ever feel that perhaps God tests us with desires we cannot name?" My heart hammered against my ribs. Yes, Brother Augustine, I fear I am not as pure of heart as these walls require." He leaned closer, ostensibly to examine the manuscript between us, but I could feel the warmth radiating from his body. "Purity of heart," he murmured, "is not the absence of desire, but the struggle against it. In that struggle we prove our devotion." His words should have brought comfort, but instead they ignited something fierce and hungry within me. I wanted to ask what desires tormented him, wanted to confess the way my thoughts lingered on the curve of his neck when he bent over his work. the way I dreamed of conversations that had nothing to do with Scripture. But the bells were ringing, calling us to evening prayer, and the moment shattered like glass against stone. We walked to vespers in silence, maintaining the proper distance between us, yet I felt as if an invisible thread connected us, growing tighter with each step. That night I lay awake on my narrow cot, staring at the ceiling while my brothers slept around me. The dormitory echoed with soft snores and the rustle of straw mattresses, but sleep eluded me. Augustine's words circled through my mind. God tests us with desires we cannot name. What were these desires that made my skin burn and my dreams so vivid I woke gasping? What divine test required such exquisite torment? The following morning brought frost to the gardens and ice to the water basins. Brother Marcus assigned me to help organize the library's collection, a task that would keep me working closely with Augustine for several days. I tried to appear solemn about this duty, but my heart leaped like a hind in springtime. We must catalog the newer acquisitions, Augustine explained as we stood among towering shelves. Brother Anselm has brought manuscripts from the monastery at York, and they must be properly recorded. The work required us to stand close together, examining each text carefully before assigning it a place in our system. Augustine's knowledge of languages amazed me. He could read not only Latin and the common tongue, but also Greek, and even some Hebrew. When he translated passages for me, his voice took on a musical quality that made even the most serious theological treatises sound like poetry. "This one speaks of divine love," he said, pointing to a passage in an unfamiliar script. The mystics wrote of union with God in terms that, well, they used the language of earthly passion to describe heavenly ecstasy. I studied the foreign letters, pretending to understand while acutely aware of his proximity. "Is it not dangerous to speak of God in such terms? Truth often wears dangerous clothing," he replied. The mystics understood that the soul's longing for God mirrors other longing. They believed all love, even the most earthly, contains within it a spark of the divine. Our eyes met over the ancient parchment, and I saw something flicker in his gaze. Fear and hope warring together. The silence stretched between us, heavy with possibility and peril. "Augustine," I whispered, forgetting the formal address we were required to use. He stepped back as if struck. "Brother Augustine," he corrected gently, but his voice shook. "Forgive me, Brother Augustine. I meant no disrespect. Thou meanest none, yet disrespect is not what I fear." Before I could ask what he did fear, footsteps echoed in the corridor outside. We sprang apart, busying ourselves with our cataloging as Brother Marcus appeared in the doorway. "How progresses thy work?" the head scribe inquired, his sharp eyes taking in every detail of our arrangement. "Most satisfactorily, Brother Marcus," Augustine replied smoothly. "Brother Thomas shows great aptitude for manuscript organization." Marcus nodded curtly. "See that you finish before nones. The library must be prepared for inspection by Father Abbot." When he departed, we worked in charged silence, every accidental touch of our hands, like lightning. The weight of unspoken words pressed down upon us until I felt I might suffocate on my own restraint. Days passed in this manner, charged moments interrupted by the rigid schedule of monastic life. During communal prayer, I found myself watching Augustine's lips move in silent recitation, wondering what thoughts lay behind his devout facade. At meals, taken in prescribed silence, I caught him glancing at me across the refectory, his expression unreadable. The turning point came during a violent thunderstorm that lashed our walls for 3 days. The library's roof developed a leak, threatening the precious manuscripts below. Augustine and I worked frantically to move vulnerable texts to safety, carrying armload after armload to the scriptorium where they could be protected. On the third night, as rain hammered the windows and wind howled through the eaves, we found ourselves alone in the library's innermost chamber. Here, the most sacred texts resided. Ancient copies of Scripture, works by the Church Fathers, illuminated manuscripts worth kingdom. "The Gospel of St. John," Augustine said, reverently lifting a particularly beautiful codex. "Look how the scribe captured the divine word in letters of gold." I leaned close to examine the intricate illumination, and suddenly his arm was around my shoulders, steadying me as I reached for the book. The simple gesture sent fire racing through my veins. "Thomas," he breathed, and this time he did not correct himself. I turned in his embrace, our faces mere inches apart. In the flickering candlelight, his eyes seemed to hold all the warmth missing from this cold, austere life. "We should not," I whispered, even as my hands rose to touch his face. "No," he agreed, "we should not." But neither of us moved away. Instead, as thunder crashed overhead and rain wept against the windows, Augustine's lips found mine in a kiss that tasted of sin and salvation combined. It was gentle at first, questioning, as if he feared I might pull away. But when I leaned into him, my hands tangling in his dark hair, the kiss deepened into something desperate and hungry. All my unnamed desires crystallized in that moment. This was what I had been seeking in these silent halls, this connection that transcended the boundaries of brotherhood. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, the weight of what we had done settled between us like a stone. "Sweet Mary, Mother of God," Augustine whispered, pressing his forehead against mine. "What have we done?" "Nothing," I said fiercely. "We have done nothing but discover what was always there. Thomas, we have broken our vows. Our vows were to God, not to this cold emptiness they call purity." I interrupt. "Tell me thou dost not feel closer to the divine in this moment than in all our years of empty prayer." He pulled back, conflict warring across his features. "Thou speakest blasphemy. I speak truth. Is not love itself divine? Did not God create us with these hearts that yearn, these souls that seek connection? The love we are called to is pale shadow compared to this," I finished. "Augustine, I have felt more of God's presence in thy kiss than in all the masses I have attended." Lightning illuminated his face, showing me tears tracking down his cheeks. "Thou dost not know what thou askest," he said. "If we are discovered." I understood his fear. The punishment for such transgression would be severe. Public humiliation, expulsion from the order, possibly worse. Yet looking at him, seeing the love and terror warring in his expression, I found I cared little for consequences. "Then we must not be discovered," I said simply. For a long moment he studied my face in the storm-flickering light. Then, as if coming to some internal decision, he kissed me again, fierce and claiming. "God forgive us," he murmured against my lips. "God forgive us both." The storm passed by dawn, but it had awakened something in us that could not be quieted. Our stolen moments became more frequent, more desperate. During the silent hours after Compline, when our brothers slept, Augustine would slip from his cell and meet me in the library's hidden alcoves. There, surrounded by the wisdom of ages, we discovered our own truths. Augustine taught me that love could be worship, that the joining of souls transcended the mere physical. In his arms, I found a peace that all my prayers had failed to provide. "Thou art he would whisper as we held each other in the darkness, his hands tracing reverent patterns across my skin. "Beautiful as the Song of Songs, terrible as an army with banners." I learned every line of his body, every scar from his life before these walls. He had been a scholar, he told me, destined for the great universities, until family disgrace sent him seeking refuge in monastic life. His mind held treasures greater than any locked chest: poetry and philosophy, mathematics and music. "Teach me," I begged during our clandestine meeting, "not just Latin and Greek, but everything thou knowest." And he did, transforming our library trysts into something beyond mere physical passion. He opened worlds to me: the poetry of Virgil, the philosophy of Augustine for whom he was named, the complex beauty of theological. Under his tutelage, I blossomed from a simple farm boy into something approaching a scholar myself. But knowledge, as the scriptures warn, can be dangerous. Brother Marcus began to notice my improved Latin, my sudden facility with theological concepts. During our daily copying work, he would pause behind my desk, reading over my shoulder with increasing suspicion. "Thy script improves rapidly," he observed one morning, "and thy understanding of these texts. From whence comes such learning?" "I study diligently, Brother Marcus," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "Indeed. And where dost thou conduct these studies?" "In the library, as is proper." His pale eyes narrowed. "The library is meant for reference, not extended private study. Perhaps thy time would be better spent in additional prayer and contemplation." It was a warning, thinly veiled. I nodded respectfully, but inside, panic clawed at my chest. If Marcus restricted my access to the library, how would Augustine and I meet? How would I survive without those precious hours in his arms? That evening, I found Augustine in our usual alcove, but his manner was subdued, worried. "Brother Marcus spoke with me today," he said without preamble. "He questions thy sudden scholarly advancement." My heart sank. "What did thou tell him?" "That thou art a dedicated student, who makes good use of the resources available." Augustine's fingers found mine in the darkness. "But Thomas, I fear we are walking too close to the precipice. If he suspects, let him suspect," I said recklessly. "I care not what any of them." "Thou must care." Augustine gripped my hands urgently. "They could separate us entirely, send one of us to another monastery, or worse, public confession, excommunication, expulsion into a world that would show no mercy to disgraced monks." The thought of losing him made my chest constrict with terror. "What wouldst thou have us do? Pretend these feelings do not exist? Return to that hollow emptiness they call devotion?" "I know not," he whispered, and I heard the anguish in his voice. "I know only that I cannot bear the thought of losing thee, yet I cannot see how we can continue." We held each other then, desperately, as if our embrace alone could hold back the inevitable discovery that seemed to loom ever closer. The crisis came sooner than expected. Brother Matthias, an elderly monk with sharp eyes and a reputation for uncovering secrets, began to take an unusual interest in our movements. I would catch him watching as Augustine and I worked together, his gaze calculated. During communal prayer, he positioned himself where he could observe us both, noting every glance that passed between us. "He knows," Augustine whispered during one of our increasingly dangerous meetings. "I see it in his eyes. He suspects, and he is gathering evidence. Then we must be more careful." "Careful." Augustine laughed bitterly. "Thomas, there is no careful in this situation. Every moment we spend together increases the danger. Every touch, every kiss, every word of love is evidence against us." I saw the fear consuming him, eating away at the joy we had found together. "Augustine, listen to me. Whatever comes, we will face it together. Our love is not a sin. It is the truest thing I have ever known." "Thy innocence breaks my heart," he said sadly. "Thou dost not understand what they will do to us if we are discovered. The shame, the punishment." "Then let us leave," I said impulsively. "Tonight. We can travel to the port cities, find passage on a merchant ship, begin new lives somewhere they cannot find us." For a moment, hope flickered in his eyes. Then it died. "And live as what? We have no trade save scholarship, no friends save our brothers here. We would be outcasts, wanderers, probably dead within a year." "Better a year of truth than a lifetime of lies," I insisted. Before he could reply, footsteps echoed in the corridor outside our hiding place. We froze, hearts hammering, as someone approached the library. The steps paused outside, and we held our breath, pressed together, in terrified silence. After an eternity, the footsteps retreated, but the message was clear. We were being watched, stalked, our every movement monitored. "We cannot meet again," Augustine said with finality. "Not like this. Not until we find a way to deflect suspicion." "Augustine." "No, Thomas. I will not be the cause of thy destruction." He kissed me once, desperate and final, then slipped away into the darkness, leaving me alone among the ancient texts that had witnessed our love and might yet witness our downfall. The following days passed like a waking nightmare. Augustine avoided me completely, speaking only when monastery business required it, his manner formal and distant. During our work in the scriptorium, he barely looked in my direction, focusing intently on his copying with grim determination. I tried to follow his example, to bury myself in my assigned tasks, and pretend my heart was not breaking with every passing hour. But the other brothers began to notice my distraction. My usually careful script became sloppy, marred with blots and errors. Brother Marcus assigned me increasingly simple tasks, his frustration evident. "Thy mind wanders, Brother Thomas," he observed after I ruined yet another page of Psalms. "Perhaps additional prayer would help focus thy thoughts." I nodded mutely and accepted his prescribed penance. 3 extra hours of prayer each day, kneeling on the cold stone floor of the chapel until my knees bled and my back screamed in protest. But even pain could not distract me from the agony of separation. I found myself looking for Augustine constantly, catching glimpses of him in the corridors, watching him from across the refectory during our silent meals, straining to hear his voice during communal prayer. And always, I felt Brother Matthias watching, his ancient eyes missing nothing. The trap closed on a night when autumn had begun to paint the surrounding forests in shades of gold and crimson. I had endured 2 weeks of this torturous separation, and my resolve was crumbling. Against all wisdom, I slipped from my cell after Compline and made my way to the library, desperate for some connection to the place where Augustine and I had discovered love. I found him there, as if he too had been unable to resist the pull of our sacred sanctuary. He stood before the shelf containing our most precious gospels, his head bowed in apparent prayer. "Augustine," I whispered, my voice breaking with relief and longing. He turned, and I saw tears on his face. "Thomas, thou shouldst not be." "Neither shouldst thou," I replied, moving toward him. Yet here we both stand. "I could not stay away," he confessed. "These past weeks have been torment. I have tried to pray away these feelings, tried to convince myself they were mere temptation, but love is stronger than fear," I finished, reaching for his hands. He did not pull away this time. Instead, he gripped my hands, as if they were his only anchor in a storm-tossed sea. "Thomas, I fear I am not strong enough to resist much longer. Every day I do not see thee, do not speak with thee, is like dying slowly. Then do not resist. We have found something beautiful, something that makes us better men than all this cold piety ever could. Why should we deny it?" "Because," he began, then stopped, his eyes focusing on something behind me. I turned and felt my blood turn to ice. Brother Matthias stood in the doorway, his weathered face wearing an expression of grim satisfaction. "Because," the old monk continued smoothly, "ye have both taken sacred vows that forbid such intimacies." Augustine and I sprang apart, but it was too late. The damage was done. Matthias had seen us holding hands, had heard enough of our conversation to understand the nature of our relationship. "Brother Matthias," Augustine began, his voice steady despite the terror I knew he felt. "This is not what it appears, is it not?" Matthias stepped into the library, his footsteps echoing like a funeral bell. "Tell me then, Brother Augustine, what should I call two monks meeting secretly in the night, speaking words of love, holding each other as lovers do?" I found my voice. "We have done nothing. Nothing save break thy vows, corrupt thy souls, and defile this holy place with thy forbidden desires." Matthias's voice cut through my protest. "Did ye think thy secret safe? I have watched ye both for weeks, seen the glances that passed between ye, noted how Brother Thomas's studies mysteriously improved under thy tutelage, Brother Augustine." Augustine stepped forward, his chin raised in defiance. "If thou hast accusations to make, make them to Father Abbot. Do not skulk in shadows like a spy." "Oh, I shall make them to Father Abbot," Matthias replied with cold satisfaction. "Come dawn, ye shall both be summoned before him to account for thy sins. Until then, ye will return to thy cells and remain there. Any attempt to flee will only confirm thy guilt." He stepped aside, gesturing for us to precede him from the library. As we walked the dark corridors toward the dormitory, I felt Augustine's hand brush mine, a fleeting touch that might have been accident but felt like goodbye. At the entrance to our sleeping quarters, Matthias delivered his final blow. "Pray well this night, brothers. It may be thy last in these sacred halls." I lay awake until dawn, staring at the ceiling while my brothers slept around me in peaceful ignorance. What would Father Abbot do when confronted with our transgression? Would he show mercy, or would his judgment be swift and harsh? As the bells of prime began to ring, I whispered a prayer, not for forgiveness, but for strength to face whatever came without betraying the love that had transformed my life. The summons came as we finished our morning meal. A young novice approached our table with obvious nervousness. "Brother Augustine, Brother Thomas," he stammered. "Father Abbot requests thy immediate presence in his chambers." Augustine and I exchanged one brief glance, perhaps the last we would be permitted, then rose and followed the novice through corridors that seemed to stretch like a path to judgment. Father Abbot's chambers occupied the finest rooms in our monastery, with windows overlooking the gardens and walls lined with his personal collection of theological works. He sat behind a massive oak desk, his weathered hands folded, his expression unreadable. Brother Matthias stood to his right, wearing the satisfied look of a hunter who had successfully tracked his quarry. "Brother Augustine, Brother Thomas," the abbot began, his voice grave, "ye stand accused of behavior unbefitting thy sacred vows. Brother Matthias has brought serious charges against ye both." "What charges, Father?" Augustine asked, his voice steady despite the tremor I detected. "Carnal relations between members of our order," Matthias. "Secret meetings, inappropriate touching, words of love spoken in direct violation of thy vows of chastity." The abbot raised a hand for silence. "These are grave accusations indeed. How do ye answer?" I looked at Augustine, seeing the decision forming in his eyes. He could deny everything, claim Brother Matthias had misunderstood innocent interactions. Perhaps we might escape with lighter punishment, additional penance, restrictions on our movements. But I saw something else in his gaze, a refusal to deny the truth of what we had found together. "Father Abbot," Augustine said clearly, "I will not insult thy intelligence or compound our sins with lies. What Brother Matthias says is substantially true. Brother Thomas and we have developed feelings that extend beyond proper brotherhood." A murmur of shock ran through the chamber. Apparently others had been summoned to witness our judgment. "And thou, Brother Thomas? Dost thou confirm Brother Augustine's confession?" Every eye in the room fixed upon me. I thought of denying it all, of claiming Augustine spoke from some madness or delusion. But looking at him, seeing the courage with which he had chosen honesty over safety, I found I could not betray the love we had shared. "I do, Father Abbot. What we feel, what we have discovered together, it is true and real." "True and real, perhaps," the abbot replied gravely, "but also forbidden by the vows ye both took willingly. Ye have broken faith with God, with this community, and with yourselves." "Have we, Father?" I asked, surprising myself with my boldness. "Or have we found something that transcends the narrow understanding of those who fear love in all its forms?" Brother Matthias made a sound of outrage, but the abbot silenced him with a gesture. "Explain thyself, Brother Thomas." "The scriptures speak of love as the greatest commandment," I said, my voice growing stronger with conviction. "Love of God, love of neighbor. Is not the love Augustine and I share a reflection of that divine love? Does it make us worse men, or better ones?" "It makes ye oath-breaker," Matthias interjected harshly. "Ye have violated thy vows of chastity." Our vows of chastity were meant to keep us from worldly distractions, Augustine. But what Thomas and I have found is not worldly. It is sacred, pure, a joining of souls that brings us closer to understanding God's love for His creation. The abbot studied us both in silence that stretched like eternity. Finally he spoke, "Ye speak eloquently of love and divine understanding, but ye cannot escape the simple fact that ye have broken solemn oaths. The foundation of monastic life is obedience. To God, to the rule, to the community. Without that obedience we have chaos." "Father," Augustine said desperately, "surely there is room for mercy, for understanding that love, even unexpected love, can be a path to holiness, rather than sin." "There is always room for mercy," the abbot replied sadly, "but there must also be justice. If I permitted thy transgression to go unpunished, what message would that send to our other brothers? That vows may be broken when inconvenient? That desire supersedes duty?" I saw our fate written in his expression, and felt a strange peace settle over me. Whatever came, Augustine and I had spoken our truth without shame. "What is our punishment, Father?" I asked quietly. "You will both be expelled from this community," he pronounced. "Thy names will be struck from our records. Thy cells given to worthier. Ye have until sunset to gather thy few personal possessions and depart these walls forever." Brother Matthias smiled triumphantly, but the abbot was not finished. "However," he continued, "I will not publicly denounce ye or send word of thy disgrace to other monasteries. Ye may seek new lives elsewhere, perhaps finding redemption through good works in the world beyond these walls." It was more mercy than we had dared hope for, though the pain of leaving our sanctuary, flawed though it was, cut deep. "Thank you, Father," Augustine said with quiet dignity. "We are grateful for thy compassion." "Do not mistake pragmatism for compassion," the abbot replied. "I have no desire to create martyrs or feed the gossip mills of neighboring communities. Ye will leave quietly, and quietly ye will be forgotten." As we turned to go, he added one final word. "Perhaps, in time, ye will come to understand that some forms of love, however sincere, exact too high a price." We spent our final hours in the monastery gathering our meager possessions, a few books, some personal items, the clothes we had worn upon arrival. I felt strangely light, as if shedding the weight of pretense and false piety had freed something in my soul. Augustine found me in my cell as the afternoon sun slanted through the narrow window. "Art thou ready?" he asked gently. I looked around at the austere chamber that had been my home for 3 years. Then, at the man who had become my world. I have never been more ready for anything. We walked together through the corridors where we had first met, past the scriptorium where we had worked side by side, through the library where we had discovered love among the sacred texts. At the gates, we paused to look back at the only life I had known since childhood. "Dost thou regret anything?" Augustine asked softly. I considered the question seriously. Did I regret the pain we had caused, the vows we had broken, the community we were leaving behind? Did I regret the uncertainty that lay ahead, the world beyond these walls that would offer no guarantees or gentle mercies? "I regret only that we waited so long to speak our truth," I replied. "And thou?" He smiled then, the first genuine smile I had seen from him in weeks. "I regret nothing, Thomas. For the first time in my life, I feel truly alive." Together, we stepped through the monastery gates into the autumn evening. The forest road stretched before us, leading toward an unknown future, but we walked it hand in hand. Behind us, the bells of Vespers began to ring, calling our former brothers to evening prayer, but we no longer heard their summons. We had found our own path to the divine, and it lay not in cold stone walls and rigid rules, but in the sacred mystery of two souls finding each other across the vastness of existence. As darkness fell, and the first stars appeared, we made camp beside a stream that sang its own vespers to the night sky. By firelight, Augustine opened one of the few books we had been permitted to take, a collection of mystical poetry he had copied in secret. "Listen," he said, his voice soft in the darkness, and began to read words that seemed written for our very situation. "Love is the bridge between thee and everything. Love is the whole, and we are but its parts." I settled against his shoulder, feeling more at home in that wilderness than I ever had within monastery. Whatever trials awaited us, whatever hardships the world might offer, we would face them as we had faced judgment, together, unified by a love that no earthly authority could diminish or destroy. The stream sang on through the night, and in its endless song I heard the voice of the divine, not the harsh, demanding God of our former life, but a presence that celebrated love in all its forms, that blessed the courage of hearts brave enough to claim their truth despite the cost. Augustine's voice joined the stream's melody as he read poem after poem, and I understood that this was our new form of prayer, not the mechanical recitation of prescribed words, but the authentic expression of souls set free to love and be loved without shame. When dawn came, we rose and continued our journey, not as disgraced monks fleeing punishment, but as pilgrims seeking a new understanding of what it meant to serve the divine through perfect love. The road ahead might be uncertain, but we walked it together, and that was enough. Years later, when we had found our place in the world, Augustine teaching in a great city's university, myself working as a scribe in the courts, we would sometimes speak of those final moments in the monastery library. The memory of that first kiss among the sacred scrolls remained vivid, a touchstone of the courage that had transformed our lives. In the medieval library, among sacred scrolls, the priest stole my first kiss. I would tell him when the weight of the world grew heavy, and he would smile, knowing I spoke not of theft, but of the greatest gift one soul can offer another. Our love had cost us the only life I had ever known, but it had given us something infinitely more precious, the freedom to live as our truest selves, united by a bond that no earthly power could sever. If this tale hath touched thy heart, grant thy favor to this chronicle. Subscribe to hear more such and share thy thoughts in the comments below. To hear the next story, click the box to thy left.